We grow up believing that to be loved is the goal, that someone choosing us means we finally matter. But what if this desire isn't love at all? What if it's just a deep, aching need to be validated, to be seen, wanted, chosen, not for who we truly are, but for what we hope it says about us? This isn't about connection, it's about survival. Emotional survival. In this video, we're not here to romanticize heartbreak. We're here to face the truth that many of us don't love the people we chase. We crave how they made us feel about ourselves. And until we see that, we'll keep calling our hunger for validation love. You say you miss them, but pause. Do you really? Or do you miss the way they made you feel? The soft buzz of a message when you least expected it. The way they smiled like you were the only person in the room. The way your name sounded more alive when it came from their mouth. It's easy to confuse this with love. But if you look closely, you might see something else. You don't miss them. You miss being seen. You miss being chosen. Because when they looked at you like that, you felt like you existed. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. For a moment, you mattered. And when that gaze disappeared, so did that fragile sense of self. There's a quiet truth we rarely admit. Being noticed makes us feel real. And when someone pulls their attention away, it feels like we disappear with it. That emptiness, that ache, it's not always heartbreak. Often, it's the void left behind when validation is taken away. This is why breakups can feel like identity collapses. It's not that we've lost a person. It's that we've lost the reflection of ourselves we depended on. When they left, they didn't just walk away from us. They walked away from the version of us we only believed in through their eyes. And suddenly, we're left questioning, if I'm not being chosen, do I still matter? This confusion between love and attention is more common than we like to believe. Many chase relationships not out of genuine connection, but because they are terrified of fading into irrelevance. They don't crave intimacy. They crave acknowledgement. They are not looking for someone to build with, but someone to validate the belief. I am worth loving. In truth, this isn't love. It's emotional survival, and it's exhausting. You pour your energy into trying to be seen, to stay desirable, to never be forgotten. But no matter how much you receive, it never seems to be enough. The hunger always returns. Fromm captured this perfectly. The need to be loved is the expression of the desire to escape from aloneness. Love, as he described it, is not about being chosen. It's about choosing. But most of us don't start there. We confuse love with the need to silence the echo of our own emptiness. We don't enter relationships to give. We enter hoping someone else will fix the hole we refuse to face. This isn't love's fault. It's the result of years of being taught that we must earn love to deserve it. Be good, be beautiful, be useful, be less, be more. Just be anything but your unfiltered self. And so, we enter relationships like auditions, waiting to be accepted, waiting to be picked. And when it ends, it feels like rejection, not just of the relationship, but of our entire being. That's why even short-lived connections can hurt deeply. Why being ghosted can spiral you into shame. It's not about them. It's the part of you that still ties your self-worth to the act of being wanted. In a world obsessed with appearances and instant validation, this pain is magnified. Social media teaches you to count likes as proof of your desirability. Culture glamorizes attention as love. You watch others be chosen and wonder why you're still invisible. You measure your value by the gaze of the other. And slowly, quietly, you forget how to see yourself. But here's something different. What if your worth didn't depend on being picked? What if you didn't need to be watched, chased, or adored to be real? What if you could choose you, and that was enough? You may feel like you're grieving someone, but maybe, just maybe, You're grieving the feeling of being wanted. And once you realize that, something changes. You stop waiting for closure that will never come. You stop obsessing over why they left, and you begin to face the deeper question: why do I feel invisible when I'm alone? There's no shame in wanting to be loved, but there is pain in needing it to feel whole. And freedom begins the moment you understand that distinction. So if you're sitting in that silence right now, refreshing your screen, waiting for them to reach back out, pause, breathe, and remind yourself gently, I don't need to be chosen to be real. I'm already here. I already matter. It might sound simple, but to truly believe it, that's the quiet revolution. Because when you've spent so long tying your worth to the presence of someone else, the absence feels like erasure. You don't just lose them, you lose the version of you that felt seen, validated, and momentarily complete in their eyes. That's why being left hurts in ways that logic can't touch. You're not grieving their departure. You're grieving the loss of who you felt you were when they chose you. Because in a world that teaches you to earn affection, being chosen becomes more than a romantic gesture. It becomes a declaration of your worth. If they choose you, you must be enough. If they don't, something must be missing in you. That's the equation your mind quietly writes behind every relationship. And in that equation, you're always a little too much or not quite enough. It's easy to confuse this with love, but real love doesn't feel like a performance. It doesn't make your value feel conditional. When being loved becomes your only access point to feeling whole, you hand your identity over to someone else's gaze. You make their approval your mirror. And when they stop looking, when they turn away, the reflection disappears. And so do you. That collapse you feel, that sinking shame, it's not heartbreak, it's disorientation, because for too long you've mistaken being desired for being worthy. You've learned to survive off of borrowed eyes, and when those eyes close, you're left alone with a self you never learned how to recognize without applause. This is where Fromm's voice becomes painfully clear. He wrote, "Immature love says, I love you because I need you. Mature love says, I need you because I love you. One takes, the other gives. One uses the other to fill a hole. The other shares from a place of fullness. And most people, unknowingly, fall into the first. We don't seek love to give. We seek it to prove. We need someone to confirm what we're afraid to claim on our own, that we are enough, that we are seen, that we matter. But this isn't love. It's longing dressed up in romance. It's insecurity cloaked in passion. It's hungry, looking for something to eat, and mistaking every hand that reaches out as nourishment. So the pain you carry may not be about them at all. It may be about what you hoped they could validate in you. That ache you feel when they stop calling or forget your name, it might not be love leaving, but fear returning. The fear that, without being wanted, you become invisible again. But here's the truth. No one else can carry the responsibility of proving your worth. No relationship, no attention, no gaze will ever be enough to silence that need if it's rooted in emptiness. Because what you call love might just be your way of begging the world to tell you you're good enough. And yet, there's hope here. Not the kind that waits for someone to return, but the kind that awakens when you do. When you return to yourself, not as someone broken needing repair, but as someone ready to stop outsourcing their identity. When you see that being chosen isn't the cure, it's the craving. And cravings aren't truths. They're signals. They're invitations to look inward, not run outward. So if you're sitting with that ache tonight, wondering why their absence feels like losing yourself, ask instead, when did I stop choosing me? When did I decide that love meant being picked? The moment you begin to answer that, not with blame, but with honesty, you begin to heal. Not because someone chose you, but because for the first time, you stopped needing them to. And that shift, quiet, almost invisible to the outside world, is the most powerful turning point, because up until now, what you felt wasn't love in its purest form. It wasn't the slow, mutual unfolding of two souls. It wasn't safety or depth or commitment. What you felt was the rush of being seen, the high of being reflected, the relief of someone else saying, even wordlessly, "You matter." And when that mirror broke, when the attention faded, the messages stopped, the eyes turned elsewhere, it didn't feel like a breakup. It felt like a collapse. Because you weren't mourning a person. You were withdrawing from a drug. That's the twist we often miss. The love you thought you had was never anchored in shared connection. It was tethered to your need for validation. You weren't in love with them. You were in love with who you got to be in their presence. They became your mirror, and you craved the mirror more than the person. You craved the echo of importance, the feeling that, in their eyes, you were finally enough. And when that mirror was taken away, you didn't know how to see yourself clearly anymore. That's not love. That's dependency in disguise. Every compliment, every text, every good morning was more than just affection. It was emotional currency. Each one was a small hit of dopamine to a nervous system that had long forgotten how to feel safe on its own. The loss of the person wasn't a death, it was a detox. And like all forms of withdrawal, it left you shaking, doubting, aching. Not because they were your soulmate, but because they were your supplier. And when your self-worth depends on external validation, you will always be at the mercy of someone else's attention. Fromm understood this deeply. He once wrote, "People are never taught how to love. They are taught how to be lovable." And so we grow up learning how to be pleasing, desirable, and impressive. We learn to perform, to shapeshift, to sparkle just enough to be wanted. But what we are rarely taught is how to give love, not as a transaction, not as a strategy, but as an act of wholeness. So we enter relationships like marketplaces, hoping our best self is good enough to be bought. We don't connect, we sell. We don't share, we negotiate. And when the deal falls apart, we don't just grieve, we question our value. The pain of not being chosen, then, becomes less about loss and more about exposure. The silence after the goodbye reveals how fragile our sense of self has become. It shows us just how much of our identity we outsource to the opinions and desires of another. That's why it hurts so deeply, not because you lost something true, but because you realize you never fully had yourself to begin with. And maybe, for the first time, that truth is louder than the ache. But love, real love, is not built on that kind of emptiness. As Fromm said, love is an activity, not a passive affect. It is not something that simply happens to us. It's something we do. It comes from within, not from longing, but from strength. Not from need, but from abundance. And that kind of love cannot be accessed while you are still addicted to being seen. You have to learn how to see yourself first. You have to learn how to be enough, even when no one's watching, even when no one chooses you. Because the kind of love you're truly craving, the kind that feels safe, lasting, and alive, can only emerge from wholeness, and no one else can build that wholeness for you. That's your task. That's your freedom. And it begins not when someone says you're worthy, but when you stop waiting for them to. That silence, the one you used to fill with their affection, their gaze, their attention, becomes something else. Not a punishment, but an invitation, an opening into the deeper question. Why do I feel so lost without their love? Because the ache isn't just about them leaving, it's about something much older, something that was already inside you long before they arrived. Their absence doesn't cause the wound. It reveals it. It brings you face to face with a truth you've carried since you were too young to name it. The fear that love must be earned, and that you, as you are, may not be enough. Fromm once wrote, "The experience of separateness arouses anxiety. It is the source of all anxiety." And you've felt it, haven't you? That trembling edge of loneliness, not the kind where no one is around, but the kind where you don't feel truly connected. You could be in a room full of people, even in a relationship, and still feel like you're floating just outside of belonging. Because when you were young, maybe you learned that love came with terms. Be good, be beautiful, be smart, be easy. Be quiet when it's inconvenient. Shine when it's expected. Don't need too much. Don't be too much. And maybe, if you kept all the rules, you'd be seen, you'd be held, you'd be loved. But what happens when a child receives love only when they perform for it? They begin to believe that who they are at their core is not enough. That love is not a safe home, but a test they must keep passing. So they grow up into adults who don't know how to rest in love, only how to reach for it. And when that reaching fails, when someone walks away or turns cold, it doesn't just feel like a breakup. It feels like confirmation of a fear they've carried since childhood. I'm unlovable unless I become someone else. That's why the pain runs deeper than most can see. You're not just missing them. You're re-experiencing every moment in your past when you felt abandoned, unseen, and not good enough. You're not just grieving the end of a relationship. You're confronting the emotional blueprint you've carried your whole life. And that's why no amount of reassurance from others ever truly settles you. Because the part of you that was wounded didn't need a partner. It needed presence. It needed someone to say, you don't have to be anything more than who you are to be loved. And when no one ever said that, you spent years trying to become lovable instead of learning how to love. Fromm saw this clearly. He understood that love, real love, can only arise once we've made peace with our separateness. Only when we stop trying to erase our aloneness with another person's attention can we begin to love from a place of wholeness. Until then, we're just trading roles. One moment the performer, the next the seeker, always afraid of slipping back into the void. But the void isn't a curse, it's a doorway. It leads back to that part of you that never needed to prove anything to deserve love. That part still exists, still waits, still remembers. So when a relationship ends and you find yourself unraveling, don't rush to rebuild. Sit with what's coming up. Listen to what hurts. Ask yourself, whose voice is this? Who told me I had to earn love? And then, softly, begin to rewrite the story. Not for anyone else, just for you. Because healing doesn't start when someone comes back. It starts when you come back to the truth of your own worth. And maybe for the first time, you'll realize the love you've been chasing was never about another person choosing you. It was about finally choosing the part of yourself that never stopped longing to be seen. The part that didn't want to be famous or perfect or dazzling, just witnessed, just known. But it's hard to hold on to that truth in a world that keeps whispering the opposite. Every screen you scroll, every image you see, tells you something different, that your worth is negotiable, that your value depends on how many people approve, engage, or desire. Slowly, quietly, you absorb the message. The more visible you are, the more lovable you become. So you start polishing the edges of yourself, framing your pain into something aesthetic, reshaping your desires to fit the mold of what deserving love looks like. Not too much, not too messy. Just enough to earn hearts, not just in real life, but on every platform that now defines what it means to be seen. Modern culture teaches you this formula early. Be more attractive, more successful, more extraordinary, and maybe, just maybe, you'll finally be chosen. And if you're not, then try harder, because in this marketplace of affection, love is no longer a deep, slow connection. It's a performance, a competition, a ranking, where likes mean attention, followers mean status, virality means worth. And somehow, somewhere along the way, love stopped being something sacred. It became something strategic. You begin to believe that love is something you can market. You tweak your image, your words, your presence to be more digestible. You learn to craft moments that might be shared, that might impress, that might look enough like love to fill the absence of the real thing. But the truth? Deep down, you don't feel closer to love. You feel further from yourself, because what you're selling is not who you are, it's who you hope they'll want. And that transaction never nourishes the part of you that longs for real intimacy. The irony is this: the more we chase the illusion of being chosen, the more we abandon the parts of ourselves that are truly lovable, not for their perfection, but for their humanity, for their stillness, for their honesty. But culture doesn't celebrate stillness. It celebrates visibility. And in doing so, it teaches you to fear being unseen. It teaches you that invisibility is equal to insignificance. So you panic when no one is looking. You spiral when no one replies. You wonder what's wrong with you when you're not the one being chosen. Again. Fromm spoke to this loss of meaning with precision. In present-day Western culture, he wrote, being lovable generally means a mixture between being popular and having sex appeal. And you've felt this, haven't you? That pressure to not just be known, but to be desired in a very particular way, the kind of desire that boosts your value, the kind of desire that wins. But in chasing that, you forget. Desire is not the same as devotion. Visibility is not the same as intimacy. And performance is never the same as presence. Love, true love, can't be found in a swipe or a curated post or a temporary high from being wanted. It's not loud or viral or always visible. It's quiet, consistent. It requires time, patience, and a version of you that is willing to be seen not as perfect, but as real. But that version of you can't show up until you stop trying to be lovable and start learning how to love. Not just others, but yourself. Especially the parts that don't win approval, that don't go viral, that don't shine for anyone else's applause. And maybe this is where healing begins. Not in being chosen, but in choosing to step off the stage. In no longer needing your worth to be proven through metrics or mirrors. In remembering that love is not a brand, not a game, not something you earn by being better than the rest. Love is a way of being, a way of seeing. And before anyone else can offer that to you, you must learn how to offer it to yourself. Even if no one is watching, even if it's quiet, even if it's slow, especially then. Because that's when you finally start to feel yourself return. Not the version of you that needed to be chosen, but the one who was always worthy beneath the noise. But old habits don't dissolve overnight. They echo. They pull you back. That's why one day, without warning, you may feel the urge to return, to check their profile, to send that message, to re-enter their orbit just to see if they might still want you. And you tell yourself, this time, if they choose me again, I'll feel whole, I'll feel enough. But you've been here before, haven't you? You got their attention, their warmth, their temporary love, and then emptiness again. Or worse, a deeper hollow than before. Because what you're chasing isn't love. It's relief. A momentary escape from the ache of not having chosen yourself. You begin to see it clearly now. This is not a love story. It's a loop, a cycle of emotional dependence that mimics intimacy, but never quite becomes it. It starts with longing, then the rush of being wanted, then the hope that this time will be different, but it never is. Because the pain was never truly about them, it was about what they represented. A mirror that reflected your worth back to you. And when the mirror disappears, you're left staring into yourself, unsure if there's anything there without their reflection. This is the danger of seeking healing through someone else. You believe they can fix the wound, stitch it closed with affection, but they can't. Not because they're unwilling, sometimes they do try, but because it was never theirs to heal. It's a wound you've protected, ignored, and passed off to lovers who were never meant to carry it. And each time they fail, the pain grows louder, more familiar. The illusion that love will rescue you begins to collapse under its own weight. Fromm warned us of this. To love without knowing how to love, he wrote, wounds the person we love. And you've seen it, in yourself, in them, in the way you loved from hunger, not from fullness, in the way you needed them to complete something you hadn't yet claimed inside yourself. That isn't love. It's a contract written in fear, a silent agreement. If you fill my emptiness, I'll give you all of me. But no one can survive being someone's oxygen. No one can live up to that need. And when they eventually fail, as they must, you're left again with the emptiness you tried to outrun. So what now, if going back only deepens the ache and staying away feels unbearable? What's left? This, the possibility of choosing yourself before anyone else gets to. Not in a surface-level way, not as self-help fluff, but as a deep and radical shift. A return to that part of you that you keep offering to others in hopes they'll protect it. But now, instead of handing it over, you hold it, you tend to it. You say to yourself, I know you're afraid. I know you want to be chosen, but we don't have to beg anymore. And from that place, something changes. The urge to return softens. The dependency begins to loosen. You stop expecting someone else to give you what you're learning to give yourself. The permission to feel whole, even in solitude. You begin to understand that true love, love that heals, love that lasts, can only grow from two people who are already rooted in themselves. Anything else is erosion. So let this be a quiet rebellion, a gentle refusal to go back just because it's familiar. A decision to pause, breathe, and ask, not will they choose me, but have I chosen myself yet? Because only then, when you are no longer waiting to be filled, can love stop being survival and finally become freedom. And in that freedom, something miraculous happens. You stop waiting to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. You stop reaching for the next glance, the next text, the next confirmation that you matter, because your worth no longer hangs in the balance of someone else's approval. You look in the mirror, not for validation, not for performance, not to be seen, but to witness the quiet truth of your existence. You are enough, even in silence. For so long, you thought love was about being picked, adored, and protected. But now you know, the most sacred love begins with the courage to claim your own heart first. No one needs to stand beside you and declare that you're worthy. You've already made that declaration yourself. You don't need to be chosen to be enough. You are enough. Even when no one notices, even when no one applauds, even when no one stays. Especially then. That's when you remember your existence was never conditional. This inner shift doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives like a breath at the edge of exhaustion. It's the gentle relief of laying down the weight of needing to be more. It's the quiet realization that you can finally rest. Not because someone made you feel safe, but because you chose to stop abandoning yourself. And in that space, the way you approach love begins to transform. It is no longer about fixing, proving, convincing, or clinging. It becomes presence, stillness, generosity. It becomes a place you pour from, not something you try to extract. Fromm believed that true love cannot arise from lack. It must come from wholeness. He wrote, "Love is the active concern for the life and the growth of that which we love, and that includes you. If you cannot hold yourself with that same concern, that same reverence, how will you ever hold someone else without unconsciously asking them to fix the cracks you won't face?" Real love, he argued, is not passive. It's not something that simply happens to you. It's something you do, something you become. This is the threshold you now stand upon, the edge between old patterns and new presence, between being chosen and being whole, between begging for significance and embodying it. You no longer need to shrink, to chase, to earn your place in someone's heart. You've made room in your own, and that makes all the difference. So when you love again, and you will, it won't be from hunger. It won't be a desperate prayer to be saved. It will be a quiet offering, a soft, steady giving of yourself without expectation, without fear of vanishing when love is no longer loud. Because now, even in stillness, you remain. Even without applause, you are alive. Even without being chosen, you are free. And that, perhaps, is what love was always meant to teach you. Not how to be desired, but how to return to yourself and stay. When you look back on this journey, let it be with softness. You didn't love them. You longed to be chosen again. You weren't broken. You were seeking emotional safety in a familiar place. And that craving? It wasn't for them. It was for the feeling of being enough in someone's eyes. We explored how what often feels like heartbreak is really an identity crisis. How being chosen became your proof of worth. How validation addiction disguised itself as love. And how, beneath it all, was a child who believed love had to be earned. But real love, as Erich Fromm reminds us, begins not in being loved, but in loving, actively, consciously, from a place of wholeness. So here's a simple practice. Every morning this week, stand in front of a mirror. Look into your own eyes, not to fix anything, not to judge, but to say, I choose you. Let this be your new mirror. One that reflects who you are, not who you need to become to be loved. If this spoke to something inside you, something real, consider subscribing. And in the comments, share. Have you ever mistaken being chosen for being loved? What does choosing yourself look like now? This is more than healing from heartbreak. It's relearning the art of real love. And maybe, just maybe, the love you were searching for was the one waiting inside you all along.